Welcome everybody back to the Three-Man Rush podcast. Once again, we just got two rushers tonight. Big Jared is off doing his own thing, but we are excited to bring to you finally Andrew's 2022 Dynasty rookie rankings post NFL draft, and then we're also going to be doing a quick little 2-round mock draft for Dynasty leagues as well. Me and Andrew are going to be doing that together, so we're really excited for this. Once again, thank you for joining us and all the support. If you are watching on YouTube, go ahead and click the like button, click the subscribe button, and the bell notification. That way, anytime we drop new content, usually at least once a week, especially we're kind of in the midst of the season where not a lot's going on, but we're still down to bring you some great fantasy content, especially Dynasty. And, help support us there. And if you're listening on podcasts, just go ahead and hit subscribe on there, show us some support as well. We're always down for comments. If you have any videos you guys want us to touch on, something specific you want us to do, make sure to leave a comment as well, and we would love to do that. Maybe even have some guests on the show sometime. Everybody's more than welcome to join on. Just let us know. Whatever works for your schedule, we can definitely fit it in. That being said, what an awesome episode we're here to bring to you today. I'm your host, Landon Oliver, here with my co-host, Andrew Scott. What is going on, my dude?
It's the most wonderful time of the year, man. We get to start talking fantasy football again.
I don't know if it's the most wonderful time of the year. We still got a long way before September 8th.
Well, it's a good time for me because I get to start doing Dynasty stuff again, which I've fallen in love with. And baseball's full swing, so I'm loving life right now, man.
Game 7s coming up.
Some really good NBA playoff basketball being played. Yeah. It's good, man.
So even though there is a break in the NFL action, we do got some pretty decent sports content going on right now. So it is a good time, but it's not the greatest time of the year. Not for me personally. Once we creep in, right around September 8th, that's when I'm thinking it's going to be getting good for me. So I'm really excited. But here we are. We finally post-draft. We know where these guys are playing now. I know in the previous episode, we kind of gave you our Dynasty rookie rankings based on pre-draft. Well, as we know, post-draft changes some things. It doesn't look like things changed too much on your board, though. But you do have some risers, some fallers, and we're really excited to get into that with you. So Dynasty rookie rankings, post-draft, this is preseason, all this kind of stuff. This is just strictly going off the team. So obviously this is 1.0. Things will get updated as camp goes. Maybe some injuries happen. Some guys might not even make the roster. I mean, you never know what's going to happen in the NFL. That's what makes it so great. So I'm really excited for this, and I'm really excited to see how things get updated as we get closer to that opening date, as we get closer to people actually drafting, which I know there's a lot of crazy Dynasty guys. Usually if you're in
there's a lot of rookie drafts already happening.
So I was going to say, so there's a lot of drafts going on right now. So if you do have a draft going on right now, this would be a great tool for you to use. Let's actually throw back to last season's, if you have it, so we can actually see, because we were looking through it before we started the episode, and you were pretty spot on a lot of those guys. So, that was looking really good. Quick. Yeah, pull it up. And really, there hasn't really been too many new, Jerry Jeudy got arrested for something that seems like it's a minor issue. It's not going to be an issue, but that's really all that's happened. Brian Edwards got traded. This is where we're at in the offseason right now. Brian Edwards got traded. So this is his Dynasty rookie rankings last season. And
these haven't been I would change some things. I would change some things now, but just for clarification, this has not been touched since August of 2021. I updated it right before our rookie draft for our main 12-team league in early August, I believe, or maybe it was late July. I can't remember, but essentially this has not been touched since late July, early August of 2021. So these rookie rankings are about 1 year old now.
Yeah, so I'm sure Elijah Mitchell would probably be a little bit further.
He would be a little higher up now.
Terrace Marshall would probably be a little further down.
He would definitely be dropping. Yeah, absolutely.
But outside of that, your top 10, outside of maybe Terrace Marshall, it was pretty spot on. Obviously Najee Harris, Etienne's injury, he wasn't able to play last
Yeah,
year, so we don't really know how that turns out. Najee Harris would probably be the RB1 right now on a lot of people's boards.
they would be on mine as well.
But I mean, it's Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts, Etienne Harris, Javonte Williams, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddell, now Rashad Bateman being the wide receiver one in Baltimore. That's
I
going to
would
push him up a lot of
probably
boards.
I would probably move both Waddle and Bateman up over Devon. Like I would keep that tier pretty much the same, but I would move Waddle and Bateman over Devontae and have Devontae at wide receiver 4, Waddle at 2, um, and Bateman at 3.
Yeah. So I mean, Rondell Moore had a pretty decent rookie year. Elijah Moore, it seems like he's primed for a bigger role. The quarterbacks, I mean, we still don't know about Trey Lance. He would probably move down your board, I imagine, but
Honestly,
Trevor
I would still
Lawrence.
take him right there in that same spot.
Oh, really? Because
Yeah, I
see,
mean
like
the rookies
I know the
below him,
reports
I'm
are coming
not.
out. Yeah, reports are
Yeah,
coming out, all that. So I mean, we'll see what happens closer to the season. But yeah, Lawrence Fields, you know, that's seems to be how it plays out in fantasy. I mean, everything's looking pretty good. So
Monroe St. Brown definitely would need to come
would
up.
probably be Fryermuth would probably go up there a little bit.
Fryermuth, Ramondre Stevenson would come up a little bit.
Well, I don't know
well.
if Ramondre would with all the 15 running backs they drafted this year.
But yeah, I mean, overall, the way I look at tier 1 is who am I okay taking at the 101? That's how I approach like tier 1 of my rankings, and that would still be the exact same for me in the order that I have it. Tier 2, I would put Javonte. There would be no tier 3 with Javonte by himself anymore. He would be firmly in tier 2 with the other 2 running backs. But I would probably have it Najee, Javonte, and then Travis Etienne, 3, 4, 5. Just with Etienne's injury, he's already missed a full year. You don't know what he's going to look like afterwards. I'm still a huge fan. I'm not like scared of Etienne or anything, but just with the unknowns, I would put the other 2 running backs ahead of him. And then, like I said, move Waddle and Bateman up a spot, drop Devontae a couple spots, drop Terrace Marshall several spots. And you could like I'd probably just flip flop Elijah Mitchell and Terrace Marshall. We just let them trade spots on the big board. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I was pretty happy how this has looked after 1 year for the most part. I mean, there's still these guys hopefully still have very long careers ahead of them, so we'll see how it shakes out. But overall, with it being my first attempt at putting together my own rookie rankings, after 1 year, I've been pretty happy with it.
Yeah, which bodes well for you this year. So now let's get to this year's
Let's hope so.
rankings. I don't necessarily hope so, just because you're a little bit lower, a little bit lower on some of my dudes. I think they're gonna ball out, but so let's get right into it. Obviously, 101, as most people have it, you've got Breece Hall there in a tier of his own.
Yeah. So like I said, tier 1 for me is who am I comfortable taking at 101? And the more I look at it, it doesn't matter what my team build is. It doesn't matter what I think my needs are. I cannot see a reason why I would take anybody over Breece Hall. I think he should be the 101 in every draft, regardless of what your team makeup looks like, team needs, anything like that. If you're picking for the 101, either you pulled off a great trade to get there, or you've got needs everywhere. You earn that 101 by having a bad roster. So I just don't see how Breece Hall couldn't be a fit for somebody picking 101. And there are 3 receivers particularly I like a lot, but I just couldn't see myself taking any of them over Breece. So tier 1 for me, the way I approach it is who am I taking with 101? Who am I okay with going 101? And this year, last year it was Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts. It was 2 deep. This year it's one guy for me.
Yeah, and obviously he was drafted to the New York Jets. So
yeah, I guess we should include that in talk. Yeah.
So he is a Jet. And now let's move on to your tier 2, where we have Drake London now of the Falcons, Garrett Wilson, Treylon Burks of the Titans, Kenneth Walker. Where did Kenneth Walker end up?
Seattle Seahawks. The other team, that's right. One of the other teams that always uses running backs.
Yes. And Garrett Wilson ended up, where did he end up?
New York Jets.
The Jets. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I thought he was with the Jets also. So Jets highly represented in this ranking. So
yeah, Yeah, I'm a big Garrett Wilson fan, man. I just think he is a really, really good wide receiver. So I didn't really. One thing that I've learned over the couple of years, over the past, like before I started making my own rankings, is to try to not overreact to landing spot with the top guys. Like, just believe what you see whenever you watch these guys play, and just know that talent is going to win out. So, um, I tried to stick to that this year, even though it was tricky with some of these guys getting landing spots that I liked a lot more. Like there was landing spots I liked a lot more than some of the players that didn't get great landing spots. But Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Treylon Burks, they are easily my 3 favorite receivers in this class for fantasy. And then Kenneth Walker, he's somebody that I'm a little bit lower on the consensus, at least from ADP wise. From what I've seen, he is almost like 102, going right after Kenneth Walker, or going right after Brees Hall. And there, me personally, I would take the 3 receivers over him, but I've got him in there in the same tier because I get it. And I do think that this is pretty much a 2 running back class. So if you are in that top 5 and you just really need running back, I would understand you taking Walker over some of these receivers. Just the way I have the actual numbered rankings lined out, I wouldn't do it personally, but it's at the point where like I get it, where like I said, I couldn't see anybody going over Brees Hall once you get into the 3, 4, 5 range. If you need a running back, really bad, like if you don't grab Kenneth Walker there, you might not get somebody that's going to produce for you in fantasy. Like, there's always a couple that pop up, but it's going to be a lot harder to predict it at the deeper you get into this rookie draft. So I get grabbing Walker early.
Yeah, I would probably definitely take Walker over Treylon Burks for sure.
Naturally, yeah,
of course. On brand there,
right.
All right, so tier 3, we have just 2 guys there in tier 3, which I was surprised you didn't throw some of these guys up in tier 2, but Chris Olave and Jameson Williams. But Olave now contending with targets with Jarvis Landry, who is now a member of the Saints as well. Mm-hmm. Michael Thomas should be healthy. We'll see how that works out.
Maybe.
So, it could work, could not. I mean, we'll see. But you do love the talent there as well. Jameis, of course, is going to air it out regardless of who is playing wide receiver. He will be throwing bombs. He has LASIK especially now, so he's throwing accurate bombs. So we'll see how that plays out. But your tier 4 is a little bit interesting to me because you have Sky Moore, who me personally would be a guy I would probably have in tier 3. And then you have Christian Watson, Jahan Dotson, and George Pickens. Pickens, I don't really know what to make of. Just because it is a Steelers wide receiver, and any chance you get, you should take a Steelers wide receiver because they're generally going to be pretty good.
Yep.
But he's a guy that seems to have some trouble, follow him around outside of the football field. There's been talks about some stuff like that. So you could be looking at a guy like kind of almost an Antonio Brown situation, except, he hasn't produced to the level of Antonio Brown where he gets there, he's productive for a little while, and then he loses his head, and then you're just you don't know what's going to happen. But
yeah,
Jahan Dotson is another guy I'm not necessarily as high on as a lot of people. I think he's a decent player, but I would definitely have a few of these other guys above him as well. So Christian Watson, I really like. Sky Moore is a guy I would have in tier 3 for me personally.
Sure. I could see that.
So what was going through your ranking here with some of these other guys? Jahan Dotson ahead of Pickens, Sky Moore below Olave and Williams. What kind of brought you into that?
So this going from basically like, whenever I said that I'm trying to not let landing spot affect me too much in terms of how I feel about the receivers, this is kind of like putting myself to the test, because pre-draft, I felt like Olave and Jameson Williams were just better overall receiving product. Like, I thought there was a gap between those two and Sky Moore and Christian Watson, but Sky Moore and Christian Watson got the obvious better landing spots with Kansas City and Green Bay compared to New Orleans and Detroit for Olave and Williams. So this was kind of me telling myself, hey, don't forget, the lesson you learned about overreacting to landing spots. and putting Olave and Williams in a tier of their own. Coming in, the pre-draft process, I kind of felt that this class was like 7 deep with guys that I really liked. And it was these 7 guys that I have in the first 3 tiers. And then after that, it was going to come down to where do these guys land? And so I wanted to make sure to put those 7 guys in their own tiers and then try to start grouping. Like tier 4 is where it really started. All right, let's shake out landing spots. Let's shake out how I felt about the player. Let's combine all that and figure out where these guys land. So that's where the Olave and Williams cutoff came from. And I'll also say, with how much I personally, and I think from what I've read, it's pretty consensus, what, the excitement that everybody has for the 2023 class. If you don't need that pick, if you're picking 8 through 12 in the first round and you can flip that pick for a random 2023 first, once you get past the top 7, I'm okay doing that. Like if you're in your rookie draft, you're at the 10, 109.
There's some dogs at running back.
Yeah, the running back class is going to be nice, and there's a couple receivers I like a lot as well. So if you can start compiling 2023 picks by moving the 108, 109, 110, whatever the case may be, I'm okay with doing it at that point as well. That was kind of also why the tier 3 cutoff happened where it did. But in tier 4, it was a mix of guys that I liked and landing spots that were beneficial for them. As far as Sky Moore goes, the landing spot is pretty obviously a great fit with no Tyreek Hill. He can play outside or in the slot. So
pretty good quarterback there too.
Yeah, pretty solid quarterback. Yeah, obviously Kelsey's going to be the number 1 option next year, but he is getting up there in age. And so at the wide receiver position, I only view Sky Moore as like real competition as Juju, and they do things a little bit differently. Like I'm not that worried about MVS. I just like, with all the chances MVS had with Aaron Rodgers to make it work, with Devontae Adams being his only competition, I'm not going to be scared of MVS all of a sudden now that he's got a different uniform on. Like if it didn't work in Green Bay, I'm not that concerned about him just all of a sudden. I could be wrong, because he's a field stretching wide receiver. The dude's tall, fast. Patrick Mahomes has a cannon. Maybe they find chemistry that Aaron Rodgers just didn't. But to me, I think Sky Moore is just a better talent. So I'm trusting that, and I'm trusting that in time. I think this Sky Moore is going to be a favorite of Mahomes. So he was the one guy I will say I was considered. I'm not that far off from you. I did consider putting him up in there with Jameson Williams and Chris Olave, but I did feel that there was a little bit of a gap in talent there. But with Christian Watson, him and Moore are almost interchangeable. It's almost just like, which guy do you prefer? Mahomes is more of the long play for Dynasty, whereas Aaron Rodgers, you don't really know how many years you're going to get out of Rodgers. But Christian Watson's the one guy where I feel like at this time next year, he could be the guy that I'm sitting here like, why didn't I have him in the top 5? Like, it was so obvious. Devontae Adams out, this big athletic freak of a receiver it is in. It's really easy to paint an incredible season for Watson, but I'm trying to trust the fact that of how I felt about them before the draft. Now let the landing spot get me too carried away, but he definitely has I feel like the most upside of anybody in this range, which is what I like to shoot for in the back of the first round or in the second round of a rookie draft. So I think that he'd be a guy that if I was in a bunch of rookie drafts, I doubt I get very many shares of, because I have him at 9, and I don't think he'll last until 9 in too many rookie drafts personally. Right. And then Dotson, I don't love the landing spot. Obviously, this is one where I just took the player over the landing spot. He had the lowest drop rate in the class, ranked 4th in contested catch rate based on Matt Harmon's reception perception. So I think he's a really good receiver. I think he'll be a solid wide receiver too. And then there's always the reality that maybe Washington decides not to pay Terry McLaurin. This is the last year of his contract. If they don't pay Terry McLaurin, there's a decent chance that year 2, Jahan Dotson is the wide receiver 1 for this team, unless they go grab another, receiver with their first round pick next year. But so there's some unknowns there. The reality is they could also move on from Carson Wentz right after next season. They could be out of that as well. And then with George Pickens to round out the way that this tier 4 was for me, the reason it cut off where it did was these are my first round guys. These 11 guys. Now the first round in a 12-team league is 12 picks, but I couldn't settle on a 12th guy that I was like, that if I had the 112, that's who I'm taking. So I cut it off here at 11. All the Steelers do is draft second round receivers and develop them. I highly doubt they pay both Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson. So targets should open up there as well. And he had, whenever you're talking about like a college prospect, a wide receiver, he has everything that you want. Like his true breakout happened as a freshman. He has the draft capital. He has the prototypical size and speed of an outside receiver. He was an early declare. He declared after year 3, like you like to see from these prospects. Like he checks all like the things you mentioned, the outside concerns that you can't put a monitor on. Those are the things to be concerned about, which is why he is 11 and not higher, honestly, because I think just talent wise he's incredible.
Well, like I said, generally if the Steelers take a wide receiver, you should probably grab that guy.
Yeah, and if they can keep Antonio Brown under wraps, I think Pickens is going to be all right. But yeah, so I mean, after that it gets a little dicey for me and it gets a little tough. Tier 5 is where it really starts to get difficult, and this is so I'll scroll down and get some of these other guys on here.
Yeah. All right. So tier 5. This is where I have a little bit of a problem here.
I thought you might.
Because I'm looking down and you're talking about Christian Watson. You're talking about size, speed, contested catches, all that stuff. And I see another guy who is literally in the same mold, where runs in the 4.3s, 6'4", contest catch machine in college, played, unlike Christian Watson, did play Division I and was one of the 4 best teams, was the main guy on one of the 4 best teams in college football. They are going into the playoffs, and you have him ranked below David Bell, Damian Pierce, Rashad White, Wan'Dale Robinson, who is 5'8", and there has never been a single 5'8" wide receiver in the history of fantasy football that has finished in the top 24 receivers.
Trust me, I know. I've read all the Wan'Dale Robinson hate on Twitter.
Just wanting to point that out there. Although I will say, in your defense, based on the Giants listing today on Twitter on the official,
he's almost 6 foot now. He had a growth
spurt
right after
he grew 3 inches overnight from the combine. He's now 5'11" instead of 5'8".
100% baked into my rankings too.
Yeah. So congrats. I was gonna say good job in the hindsight of knowing the growth spurt was coming.
Yeah, I felt it in my own bones.
But look, I gotta ask, what's the problem with Alec Pierce? What are we doing here?
So the problem kind of starts right where you began your statement off of. He was the main guy on one of the 4 best teams in the nation. He was the wide receiver 1, and yet somehow, with no real target competition from a talent standpoint, he only accounted for like about 26% of the receiving yards on a per game basis in his last year with Ritter at quarterback. Now there have been some second round receivers that have succeeded with that low of a percentage of yards per game, but it was, guys like DK Metcalf, who was competing with targets with AJ Brown, or Jerry Jeudy, who was competing with targets with Devontae Smith and Henry Ruggs and Jalen Waddle. And Alec Pierce didn't have that level of competition for targets, but was playing with one of the best quarterbacks in college football, but still didn't really have the production that you would.
Yeah, to an extent, because I will say, if you do roll the footage, there was a lot, especially the Alabama game, for example, he had 2 receptions in the Alabama game. He was triple covered on that. Like, they literally rolled 3 guys over to him.
Oh yeah,
consistently
that
during that game.
Yeah.
Or, going through some Cincinnati film now that he has been drafted by the Colts, I kind of dug a little bit deeper in, because, most Cincinnati film I was watching Ritter. Pierce always did kind of jump off the screen just because of, the size, the speed, going up over guys in the end zone. But most of it was just quarterback evaluation. So I will say, if Desmond Ritter was more accurate on his deep balls, Alec Pierce would have, there's a good chance that guy would have probably had 15 to 20 touchdowns, because there was a lot of really wide open misses from Ritter on the deep ball. We've talked about Ritter, the accuracy concerns, some of the footwork concerns whenever we were breaking down Ritter. But yeah, I think this is a guy with Matt Ryan, and he's stepping into a team that literally has Michael Pittman Jr. and then question marks everywhere. I mean, you got Paris Campbell, who's always hurt. And then outside of that, T.Y. Hilton, could they bring in another veteran? We don't know. Julio Jones, we don't know. But as of right now, they don't. And it's looking like Alec Pierce is the wide receiver too, just off the jump, because Paris Campbell can't stay healthy. And then there's a lot of question marks right behind that. So you're looking at a guy who has all the tools, going with one of the better quarterbacks of the last 15 years. And, you got him below David Bell, who, as we've talked about on the show, I mean, the guy put on probably one of the worst combine performances, of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out is like, so what would be the difference? So Christian Watson, obviously, going to Aaron Rodgers and all that, but he's another guy that's extremely raw, didn't have the college production because he was in an offense that didn't throw the ball a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Almost kind of similar to Cincinnati. They didn't throw the ball a ton. They threw it more than North Dakota State, but you're just basically looking at Christian Watson as well. He's going to the Packers. He doesn't have a lot of competition, and he has all the physical tools. Where you're looking at Alec Pierce, and it's like, well, he was more productive in college. He has all the same tools. He, doesn't really have a lot of competition outside of Michael Pittman. And I mean, you got Jonathan Taylor, Naheem Hines, all that. But so kind of what's the difference between those two guys? Because it seems like outside of the quarterback, they're almost kind of in very similar situations.
Well,
except Pierce was a little more productive in college.
Well, Christian Watson accounted for more of NDSU's receiving yards per game on a per game basis than Alec Pierce did. He had a higher percentage. So he had the, he had the receiving production that you look for, and he has the size, the speed, the early breakout age. But he also has the, there was the weird COVID year where NDSU played like spring ball. Trey Lance had like played one game that year and stuff like that. So that kind of funked up Christian Watson's numbers as well, to whenever you just look at them, they don't necessarily look right. But with Alec Pierce, to get back to him, the one thing that I didn't really touch on, I talked about the receiving production and wanting to see, around 30% of the receiving yards on a per game basis, stuff like that. The other thing is that he wasn't an early declare. And whenever you look at a list of wide receivers that didn't get drafted until they were a senior and accounted for less than 28% of the team's receiving yards per game, it's a list of almost all busts. So I'll just say, if Alec Pierce does hit, he would be an outlier based on his receiving production in college and the year he came out. If you put those two factors together, look at players prior to him that got drafted that meet that criteria, he would be an outlier. He would be one of like 3 out of 11, 12 guys, I think it was, over the last few years. So that's where my concerns are. And I mean, I have him and David Bell. They lead off it, which honestly, I've been thinking about putting him and David Bell in the back of tier 5 versus starting off tier 6, because I don't think there's ever a time where I'm grabbing Kenny Pickett before taking a shot on these two guys. Whereas the rest, like the people I have below Kenny Pickett, I might actually consider just taking Pickett. So I think that they might need to be put in the back of tier 5, both David Bell and Alec Pierce. But I mean, with David Bell, and like I did go back and forth with these two guys of who I wanted to rank up above the other, but Bell had his early breakout in his first year. He had 35% of the team's targets in his last year in college. And now you add the landing spot where he's on the Browns with Deshaun Watson. Amari Cooper is his only really true competition for targets. Donovan Peoples-Jones is there. And I do think David Njoku will be a bigger factor with Austin Hooper out the door. But I think you could very easily see David Bell step into the Jarvis Landry type role for this offense and immediately as in year one. Now, who knows when Deshaun Watson even gets on the field? That's a whole other factor you have
Jarvis
to consider.
Landry, to your point, Jarvis Landry, another guy that did not have a very good combine.
Right. Yeah. But David Bell, it's you have to try to, if you want to believe in David Bell, you're gonna have to trust the tape, because you certainly can't look at his testing numbers, his athletic testing numbers, and that paint a pretty picture off of that. It's no doubt that was ugly. And if he had a better combine, he would have been much higher on this
Yeah,
list.
the only thing that really concerns me tape wise with David Bell is lack of separation um, against college cornerbacks, and it's only going to get tighter in the NFL. That would be the only thing that really concerned me. Whereas Alec Pierce, he generated a lot more separation. I think obviously due to the size, the speed, stuff like that. Um, and then generally that's the kind of stuff that does translate better to the NFL as opposed to like, if you don't get a lot of separation in college, it generally
Right.
doesn't get easier for you to get separation once you get into the league.
No.
Um,
Two
but let's get
more.
up to your tier 5 actually. So I'm
There's
done.
two.
Yeah.
There's two more guys that I need to. I feel like I need to explain, because I feel like I'm going to get, if people do see these, I feel like I'm going to get roasted for two people in particular. And that's Wan'Dale Robinson being as high as he is, and
Yeah,
James Cook being as low as he is. So I
I
feel
was a
like
little more homerish on Alec Pierce. I think you're a little more homerish on Wan'Dale
so
Robinson.
that's the first thing, is I want to get, I want to get it out of the way that I am a Kentucky fan, have been my entire life. I've got the rose colored glasses on whenever it comes to Wan'Dale Robinson, but I promise that's not the only reason. Okay. He did have over 100 receptions and over 1,300 yards just receiving at Kentucky last year in the SEC, playing an SEC schedule. And that doesn't even factor in what he did running the ball. He got great draft capital by a new regime in New York that obviously, they took him over a number of receivers that most people felt like should have went before Wan'Dale in the draft. So they very clearly were targeting him. A new regime. I trust Brian Daboll. I thought that was a great hire. I think that he's going to be a solid coach. If I'm wrong about that, then this pick probably won't work out either. But the draft capital he got, his college production, he's got all the athleticism and talent that you could want. He's short. He's got the speed, he's got the breakout age, he's got the receiving production in college. He was an early declare. The size is the only red flag. But if you give him, like, ignore the fake age that got put out, the fake size. If you give, like, his real size, if you give him like one more inch, I'm pretty sure he's the same size as Elijah Moore with the New York Jets that we all love. Like, I get the whole 5'8" and shorter thing, but if you look at let's get to that point. If you look at every wide receiver that is 5'8" or shorter that was drafted since 2002, Wan'Dale Robinson is the highest drafted of any of them. He's first in career average receptions per team pass attempt, again, against the SEC. And he's one of only 6 of like the 22 that was an early declare. He is literally the greatest 5'8" wide receiver prospect of all time. Okay, so if he doesn't work, then yeah, none of them are going to work. But the dude is literally in terms of his college production, what his testing numbers, everything like that. You factor all that in. There has not been a better college prospect at wide receiver that's been 5'8" or shorter, other than Wan'Dale Robinson. So, like, if I get burned on this guy, if this doesn't work, I'll never rank a guy 5'8" or or shorter this high again. But if there was ever a guy that was going to hit, it's going to be Wan'Dale. And so, with the Kentucky blinders on, I am excited about the guy. Not extremely excited about the landing spot, honestly, but I am excited that he went to a team that clearly believes in him with how high they took him in the second round over some other receivers that were on the board. So that's why I have Wan'Dale at 13. Now, James Cook, I've got him at 15. Right now, according to Sleeper, he's the 9th player off the board. So he's one of the first guys where it's like, I've got a pretty decent gap between myself and an ADP. My main concerns are the obvious ones. I feel like I don't think he has the build to be a 3-down back, and he wasn't an early declare either, which is something that you would want to see. If there was ever an offense to have a solid fantasy year as a pass catcher and be reliable, it's pretty fortunate that he landed in Buffalo. The landing spot's great. They throw just as much as anybody in neutral game scripts. He should have plenty of chances to be a pass catching back. They went after J.D. McKissick. Washington stole him back. So clearly they want somebody in that role. And I think he'll be very solid in full PPR leagues. but I just don't see this guy being a workhorse. So I'm not going to put him up there in the first round. So I think he should be an early second round pick. Now, if you want him to be a first round pick, then I get it. I mean, he's in that tier. I've got 5 guys essentially: Trey McBride, Wan'Dale Robinson, Rashad White, James Cook, Damian Pierce. I couldn't really decide if I was on the clock at the 112, who would I take? I couldn't really make up my mind. So they're all kind of grouped there. So if one of these guys lands at the 112, I get it. But that's where that break off went. So just wanted to clear the air on those. I know those would kind of be two players here in tier 5 that most people are much lower on Wan'Dale than I am, and most people are much higher than James Cook than I am. So just wanted to get those out there before we moved on. So tier 6, I think David Bell and Alec Pierce, they'll probably end up getting moved up to the bottom of tier 5. But then you've got the first quarterback, Kenny Pickett, John Mechie at 20, Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver for the Cowboys at 21, Brian Robinson Jr., running back for Washington, 22, Tyron Davis Price, running back for the 49ers. All they do is draft running backs at 23. Isaiah Spiller, running back for the Los Angeles Chargers at 24. Zamir White, running back for the Las Vegas Raiders at 25. And then Tyler Algier, running back for the Atlanta Falcons at 26. This tier break is essentially, I've got 26 players that I feel like, here are the guys that I feel like should go in the first 2 rounds. Now, the first 2 rounds of a 12-team league are obviously only 24 people. But these 26 guys are who I settled on of like, these are the guys that I think should be the guys that go off the board in the first 2 rounds of a rookie draft, which is what we are going to be doing today. So that's where the tier break happened, from tier 6 to tier 7. And then the only thing I'll tell you from that point on, tier 7 to tier 8, tier 8 to tier 9, essentially how I do this part of my rookie rankings is like, I already have everything written out as like, here's my running back 1 through 20, here's my wide receiver 1 through 20, whatever the case may be. And I start putting these guys in of like, here's who I want above this guy. If I have to pause for longer than a few minutes to figure out which guy goes next, I found a tier break, so that tier 7, 8, and 9, that's basically how those came along. So that's kind of how I develop these whenever I'm looking at these. So this is what the rest of the draft looks like. This part in a 1 quarterback league, most of these guys aren't going to be very interesting to most people. I'm down to talk about as many of them as you want because I love this shit. But so I'll let you kind of look this over. If you have any questions or anything, I'd be happy to dig into it.
Oh, I mean, no, not too much. Obviously, like, I love Romeo Dubes. I think there's a lot of guys in tier 7 that I think, when we're looking at this next year, could probably be moved up. They'll probably be over some of the guys in tier 5. Tyquan Thornton is a guy that I'm really high on. Just receiver wise. I think, a lot of people thought he was a reach where he was, but if you really put on the film, I mean, that guy's he's a dude. Okay, like
Wouldn't hurt him to put on a little bit of weight. He's a little skinny.
Yeah, he's a little small, but
he got some size to him though.
Yeah,
like height wise,
he got some speed too. That's
he's got height and speed. Yeah.
Obviously, like I said, love Romeo Dubes. Thought he was fantastic. He's going to be a surprise guy. You already know Jelani Woods. You want to talk about the most freakish guy probably in the entire class.
That's a freak athlete. Yeah,
that would be the guy, and especially at tight end, he'd be a mismatch everywhere on the field, especially in the red zone. That's a guy, like, especially playing tight end. Like, you already know, like, most of your production as tight end is going to come for touchdowns, and he has a very, very, very strong chance of leading every single tight end in this rookie class in touchdowns their rookie year, and it would only probably grow from there. He's really the only tight end. I mean, I like Greg Dulcich. Trey McBride, I'm not really super high on. Isaiah Likely, I'm a big fan of as well. But Jelani Woods would be the only guy that I think has the athletic profile and the opportunity and some of this other, the other things that I think could really turn into a bona fide, like, stud tight end, just because of how much of a mismatch he is over the other guys.
Right.
and that's just pure athletic, looking at that. But Malik Willis, Hassan Haskins, I think are way too high. They should be moved down quite a bit. Just on brand.
Nothing Tennessee Titans related that would make you
No,
feel that
absolutely
way, right?
not at all.
Okay.
No, absolutely not at all. Just purely based on players. They're not good. They're probably never going to be good.
Not going to amount to anything.
No. Calvin Austin at 40. That's a hate crime. That's a hate crime, bro. You're gonna talk all that about Wan'Dale Robinson.
It does seem a little hypocritical about me loving Wan'Dale
You're gonna talk about
Robinson.
Wan'Dale Robinson. You got him all the way up at 13, but you're gonna shit once again a Steelers wide receiver.
Yeah, look, you think Wan'Dale Robinson's small, then Calvin Austin's like super miniature and doesn't have the college production to.
Yeah, but one of them was drafted by the Giants and one of them was drafted by the Steelers.
Hey, but we've been talking we've been talking for the last couple weeks about how the Giants and the Jets have turned the corner.
There's few rules in fantasy football that we have to abide by, and that is if the Steelers take a wide receiver, no matter where they're taken, that guy's going to be good.
It does happen more often than not, for sure.
So I would probably move him up a little bit, especially like I said, my love. Jeremy Ruckert is another guy. I think he'll be better than Trey McBride, if we're being honest.
You do not like Trey McBride, huh?
It's not that I don't like Trey McBride. I just have a couple tight ends that I think have a better shot. Trey McBride was my 4th tight end in this class.
Okay, well he was my first pre-draft.
Ruckert was my first. Dolchich was my 2nd. Jelani Woods was my 3rd. McBride would have been my 4th guy. Just because I think all of those guys, and Jelani Woods was very situation dependent on, but like now after the draft, I would rank it probably Woods and Ruckert would be in a tier. Then I would have Dolchich. Then I would have Trey McBride. But I'm telling you, man, Jeremy Ruckert is a guy that he didn't really get a lot of opportunity to show what he could do at Ohio State because he was mainly used as a blocker. But that guy is.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite late round targets.
Yeah, he's going to open a lot of eyes in the NFL.
Yeah.
Another guy said, I do like Isaiah Likely as well. I don't even see him on here. Unless he's.
He didn't make. I don't think he made the top 50.
Yeah. So, I mean, Justin Ross, depending on health, he was undrafted. He doesn't have the draft capital, but
he's
that guy's healthy. Yeah, if that guy ends up staying healthy, he could be a guy that could really move up a lot of boards. But I mean, outside of that, I'm down with it. So I'm actually ready to get to this mock draft.
Cool, let's do it.
You've put all of this work in. Just one final look. Give a big shout out in the comment section. Give a big shout out on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle now? Our boy.
I'm back on the Twitter land. Yeah,
he's live.
I couldn't stay away from the just constant sports content just being thrown in my face anymore. So I got back on there.
You gotta mute all the celebrity / political shit.
That won't even make its way to my
exactly.
shit.
Every time I see anything about a celebrity or anything political, I just block the account.
Yeah.
And it's just pure sports is all my timeline is.
I'm on there. It's Drew 3MR. So you had to rep the 3-man rush podcast. So put the little 3-man R at the end, just Drew 3MR. On Twitter, I'm on there. Apparently I'm already bad luck because like 2 days after I was like, oh, Jerry Jeudy's going to be one of my favorite values in drafts this year, he gets arrested. So hoping that doesn't continue into the season with players that I like. But yeah, so I'm there, Drew 3MR on Twitter. And then of course, Landon's on there at Landon289 as well. Be sure to go check him out, drop him a follow too.
And follow us at 3-Man Rush Podcast as well.
We have a podcast
Twitter account. Twitter account. So make sure to follow that. But now we are ready to officially, if you're watching on YouTube, you're in for a treat. We are going to be doing a live rookie mock draft. We're only going 2 rounds, so that is 24 picks. It is half point PPR, no tight end premium, no super flex quarterback, none of that crazy stuff. Just a strict rookie dynasty half point PPR mock draft. And we're going to be doing 2 rounds, this snake format, and we are going to be alternating picks. Obviously, Drew, since he put the draft on, he's a little bit of a cheat. He's like this in real life too. He gives himself the 1-1
Every chance I get.
Yeah, that's just what he does. If you play in a league with him, he's drafted 1-1 in almost every single one.
If you know, you know.
Yeah. So staying true to form here, he is going to cheat and have 1-1. Let's just knock it off, and we already know where you're going based on your rookie ranking. It's pretty easy.
Made it pretty clear. The one thing I want to know before I make the selection, do you disagree?
No.
Okay. We didn't really get to that part whenever I was talking about the rankings. So
don't like the Jets, but love the talent.
And guys, I don't know if you'll agree with me on this one, but one thing I would say, stop being scared of Michael Carter. All right, Breece Hall, like Michael Carter was drafted because he was a good receiving back. Breece Hall is a better receiving back.
Look, I'll put it this way. Breece Hall is the Jonathan Taylor to Michael Carter's Nyheim Hines.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good comparison. Don't be scared of Michael Carter. Breece Hall is going to be fine. Michael Carter might be a little involved in the beginning, but eventually this will be Breece Hall's backfield. So yeah, he's 1-on-1. So I'll just go ahead, cross that off the list, take that out of there, and let you make your first pick.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go here with your boy, Atlanta wide receiver Drake London at 1-2.
Very nice. Okay. I like it. That's my second player off the board as well. I think he should be the first wide receiver off the board. Love the player, love the talent, and then obviously love the lack of competition for targets as well. Yeah. So after Drake London, my third player, just staying true to my board. That if Kenneth Walker hadn't come off yet, this is probably where he would normally come off. But for me, the next guy up is Garrett Wilson. That would be where I would be going here at the 103.
Yeah, and this is where I would definitely, if I'm 1-4, I would probably be a little bit happy that Kenneth Walker slid. Obviously, with Rashad Penny only coming back on a very minimal one-year deal. He can't stay healthy. Then also, you got my boy Chris Carson, sending hearts out to him. Carried me through many of winning arguments against Drew for like a 3-year span. He finally
Rashad Penny finally came through for me at the end of last year, though.
Yeah. Only because Chris Carson bit the dust. Chris Carson didn't
because Chris Carson got hurt. Yeah.
So I'm going to take Kenneth Walker here.
So that makes this very easy because this is a tier break for me at the 105, and that's if I'm in a rookie draft this year, I'm really hoping I'm in the top 5 because I really like how the top 5 players shakes out regardless of who I end up grabbing. So I will grab Treylon Burks, wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans, and I think he should be. Honestly, I think he should be the early favorite for I think he'll have the best rookie season of any of the wide receivers in this class.
Well, I mean, in true Titans fashion, he is questionable already.
The breathing problems and stuff.
Did walk off the field earlier today, so he is questionable.
He'll be fine.
Yeah, picking right up where AJ Brown left off. All right,
that's very true.
Yeah, so for me, this one, this is a guy I'm actually really high in fantasy drafts, just because I think he's going to be used in a very, very good role for what that team does. Not necessarily as the running back, but as the receiving back. And there's not a lot of competition there for the receiving back. And your main running back is Josh Allen. So I'm going to go ahead and take James Cook here.
See, this is what I'm talking about. That's why it's like if I'm in rookie drafts this year, if I was in a bunch of rookie drafts, I probably wouldn't have James Cook on any of my teams because he went off the board here at 6 overall. I think his ADP is the 109, and I've got him down at 15. So that just kind of shows you I will not have any James Cook this year unless I just happen to trade for him. Next,
I think having it being half point PPR does kind of work a little bit in his favor as far as running backs go.
Yeah, it definitely could. I look at him more as like a true 3-down, like a true 3rd down back, and even in half point PPR, there's not too many 3rd down running backs that you're that excited to start in fantasy. Now, if there's going to be one, it would be James Cook getting the draft capital he got, the landing spot that he got, how much that team passes the ball, Like this is it's the probably the best possible situation for a pass
Yeah,
catching
yeah.
running back. So if there was one that was going, you were going to be excited about, it's probably him. But just too many wide receivers that I like personally. One of which being the guy that I'll take here at the 107, which is my 6th overall player, which is Chris Olave. And I know Jarvis Landry just signed with the Saints, and that changes nothing for me personally. I mean, for one, Jarvis Landry, I think he's coming up on 30. And
Yes.
he
He'll be
doesn't,
30, and it was a 1-year, $6 million deal.
yeah. And on top of that, he doesn't do the things that Olave does. Like like Jarvis cannot stretch the field like Chris Olave can.
Well, Michael
Uh,
Thomas can't either, really.
right. Yeah. So I think Olave, regardless, has a clear role from right out the gate. He led all charted prospects in this class in success rate versus both man and press coverage based on Matt Harmon's reception perception, the best against both. And then
You
you
know
can,
who's really good against press coverage?
who's that?
Alec Pierce.
Almost as good as Chris Olave.
Yeah.
And then you combine that with the fact that he's a talented vertical threat, and he had a contested catch rate of almost 83%, which is pretty high as well. So, you got a guy that can go deep, that's going to make contested catches, that can beat press and man. You combine that with his extremely impressive junior season of accounting for almost 40% of the team's yards per game, despite sharing the field with Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who I think, I think JSN is better than both Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson.
I concur.
So the fact that he, obviously that was JSN's rookie season whenever he did that, and Jameson Williams too. Not to forget that Jameson Williams was an Ohio State Buckeye before he went to Alabama. If Chris Olave would have came out as a junior, his prospect profile would have looked even better. He didn't come out as an early declare. It was his 4th year. That's really his only knock on him, but I'm willing to ignore it, because if he would have came out as a junior, he probably would have only been behind Jamar Chase, honestly. There's an argument to be made that he would have been ranked higher than Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and Rashad Bateman in last year's class if he would have came out. So I'm willing to overlook the early declare portion of it with how impressive his junior season was. So yeah, I like Olave a lot. Definitely don't hate the landing spot. And he's one of the guys that I've probably risen on most over the past month or so.
All right, and that leaves me at 9, and I'm going to go with his former teammate here, new Detroit line. That is Jameson Williams, who I think has the chance to be the best wide receiver in the class, as good as anybody.
Yeah, I've got him at 7. So it's not like I'm extremely low on him, but I think I am lower than consensus. But as of right now, ADP wise, at least according to Sleeper, he's also the 107. So according to that, I'm kind of on par with him as far as that goes. But I feel like I'm a little lower than most people on Jameson Williams. But I do like the talent, and obviously, what Detroit did trading up from the last pick in the first round all the way up to, I think, pick 11 or pick 12 to grab Jameson Williams. That's a big jump.
It was
to
the
go
Minnesota
get your guy.
pick, I believe.
Yeah, so that's a big jump to go get your guy. So that for me again is another tier break. The only guy that I didn't have in the top 8 that went in the top 8 was James Cook. But other than that, the 7 guys that I feel like should be off the board by now are. So we're not too far off on most of this. And then the next guy that I'm going to take is the next guy in ADP, which is Sky Moore. It's just, we talked a bunch about that already, so I won't get too deep. But if I do keep my late first round pick in this draft, if I can grab Sky Moore at the 108, 109, something like that, I'm pretty excited about the possibility of that, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I'm going to take the next guy right here in ADP as well. I'm going to take Christian Watson.
Yeah, these two guys it's really just kind of pick your flavor. I feel like they're both very similar in terms of second round receivers that had great landing spots with great quarterbacks and offenses that lost targets from the previous year. So it's just kind of what do you want to go with? So I don't hate it at all. All right, so 111. I'm going to take a guy that, based off what you said, I don't think you're going to want to take him anyway. So this won't hurt your feelings to get him off the board. But I'm going to grab Jahan Dotson, wide receiver for the Washington Commanders, who could very well be the wide receiver 1 for the Commanders come this time next year. If they don't pay Terry McLaurin, they should pay Terry McLaurin. He deserves to be paid. But he's a great route runner. He got great hands. I think he's a very solid receiver. He doesn't have the Christian Watson or Sky Moore upside, but he's a good player and a dependable player. And I almost feel like kind of like whenever you mix how good his hands are in his route running with the draft capital he has, he just feels like a really safe player to grab at the back of the first round.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to go a little bit off board here. I mean, he's on the board, but he's definitely not up there, or not up there in the top 3. But I'm actually going to take a shot on Isaiah Spiller here. I know he didn't test very well, but this is a guy I think that could very clearly have a role with Austin Eckler in a very prolific offense. He's going to have a lot of opportunities to score touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, Spiller reminds me of a somewhat better version of what they already have on the roster in terms of backup running backs. I don't think Spiller is great at anything, but he's decent at pretty much everything. To the point where I don't think he's going to threaten Austin Eckler's spot as long as Eckler is there. But I do think that he could firmly step into that Justin Jackson role and with some baked in upside if anything was to happen to Eckler. Now I have him going, in the back of the second round versus back of the first, but I do get it. There's definitely some upside baked into him just with Eckler's age, and if he does get injured, things like that. But
I was gonna say Eckler, he has been, he's been known to deal with injuries every now and then.
Yeah, he is not the clean bill of health. But that makes this one really easy for me because this will close out tier 4 for me. Once I make this pick, which would be George Pickens, the wide receiver now of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who we talked about a decent amount already, so I won't get too much into that. But my number 11 overall player, I don't know why it went there. There we go. So 11 overall, win at 13, not really all that far off.
All right. And then now, I'm looking at the guys that are still on the board here. I'm actually going to take another shot at Tyler Algier. They did just cut Mike Davis. Cordero Patterson is really the only other running back there. And they're going to have to run. They can't throw the ball out with Marcus Mariota. And the other 2 guys that are on there, I like Dameon Pierce a little bit, but Houston, they're coming from that New England tree where there's a good chance they just use like 4 or 5 running backs and just swap them out constantly. And they have a ton of running backs. So that's a guy. I just worry about that.
Yeah. With Tyler Algier, he's got the opportunity there for sure. The thing that makes me most nervous about him is the fact that he didn't come off the board until the 5th round. I think he was like around the 150th pick. And it's tough to have long-term confidence about a running back if they don't come off the board in the top 100 picks. So the opportunity is there for him to be a producer year 1 right off the rip, but you might literally just be drafting 1 year of production, and then that might be all you get. And then Atlanta drafts a running back with their early 2nd round pick next year, or something along those lines. Similar to kind of what the Jets did with Michael Carter and Breece Hall. I could see Tyler Algier falling victim to that same situation, where they draft this late round guy. There's a lot of opportunity. People are excited, and then the very next year they come out and they take a 2nd round running back. The way that the Jets did with Breece Hall. I could see something like that happening with Tyler Algier. Similar, it's kind of similar with Isaiah Spiller as well. The reason why I have those guys down at 24 and 26, the draft capital just is not there to make you feel like you're buying a long-term asset. So the next guy that I'm going to take off then is going to be Trey McBride. Now I know I'm much higher on him than you are. He is my number 12 overall player, but there's a group of guys that I'm kind of debating on who I would want to be that 12 player off the board, but he is in the discussion for me. He was my number 1 tight end pre-draft, and then post-draft, he was the first tight end off the board. And I like the landing spot, honestly. I mean, with tight ends, whenever you look at them, they typically take about 3 years to really come into their own. And the Cardinals have Zach Ertz under contract for the next few years. And I believe it's after the second year, if I remember correctly. It's pretty reasonable for them to get out of that contract if they wanted to. So once Trey McBride is starting to kind of come into his own, they could very well move on from Zach Ertz. They just inked Cliff Kingsbury to an extension. Steve Keim, their GM, they're going to be there long term. It seems like it's trending that way with Kyler as well. Like, you kind of know what you're getting in terms of the stability from the quarterback position in the front office that chose this player.
Couple losing seasons, and those extensions really get scoffed.
Yeah. I don't think Kyler's going anywhere. Maybe the coaching staff, but I don't think Kyler's going anywhere. But prior to getting drafted, he had the receiving production you wanted out of a tight end. He had the draft capital, the size, the speed. He had the early breakout age. He had everything that you wanted pretty much. And I like the landing spot as well. So it's never that fun drafting a tight end at this point, because they're going to have to just kind of sit on your bench for a couple of years. But I think Trey McBride will be worth the wait once you get there.
All right, so let's look here. Let's go down the board a little bit, see what else we got working here, because I don't like any of these guys on the board here.
Just go ahead and take your boy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I'm taking probably as good a chance as anybody to have a impact year one. And with Reggie Wayne as the wide receiver coach, he's probably only going to get better. So I'm going to take the talent.
We have already talked plenty about them, so I won't get too much into that. And I'll grab another guy that we just talked about quite a bit, and Mr. Wan'Dale Robinson. That he's, we're at the 17th pick. He's my 13th player. So it's something to where I would love to pull the trigger at this point. I wish I had more rookie picks this year, because I would love to be able to target him, because it seems like nobody else wants him. So I'd be happy to scoop him up just to see what happens. But yeah, we talked about him enough already, so I won't get too much into that. But
all right, and I'm not going to make the mistake everybody did last year with Elijah Mitchell. I'm going to take the other San Francisco running back that was drafted, and that was, I can't pronounce his name, Davis Pride, Tyrion, Game of Thrones there. Anytime you can get a San Francisco running back, there's a good chance that at some point during the season, they're going to produce a top 3 overall fantasy week. Now they're not going to do that every week, but he could be a guy that blows up and then you flip him, for either a pick next year or, add him in a package for another guy. So, I mean, it's, you're basically just trying to take it to the bank.
Yeah. And then that's essentially what I have in my notes for him. I was reading through the notes, trying to figure out like what you said that that I have written down that you didn't say. Yeah, I mean, essentially, they used another top 100 pick on another running back. He doesn't have the speed that you would typically see from a Kyle Shanahan running back, like in terms like 40 time type of speed, but the dude's big. Like, he is fast for how big he is. He's just not 49ers fast. He's not Elijah Mitchell fast. He's not, like Raheem Mostert fast, but he's bigger than those guys. So, you consider the draft capital, you consider the fact that 49ers didn't have a lot of draft capital because, the Trey Lance deal and things like that. Like, I think like 3 of their last 8 or 9 draft picks were used on running backs between the Trey Sermon 3rd round pick that they traded up for, and then Elijah Mitchell, I think in the 6th round. And then now the Davis Price in the 3rd round. It's mind boggling to me that they continue to use this many picks on running backs. But if you're a 49ers running back, you're going to get hurt. And somebody else is going to step in, and that guy's going to be Davis Price eventually. So he's definitely worth the dart throw in the 2nd round, without a doubt. So for me, the next guy off the board is actually my running back 3. He was my running back 3 pre-draft, and then I kept it that way post-draft as well. That's Rachaad White, now running back of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And James Cook is kind of the popular pick for the running back 3 behind the obvious 2 guys, but I liked White more pre-draft, and I just couldn't shake it, to be honest with you. I mean, I still like the landing spot. Now, obviously, he's got Leonard Fournette in front of him. But I feel like if there is a running back not named Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker that could possibly end up being a 3-down back, I really think Rachaad White is the guy. I think he could possibly be the best pass catching. Even James Cook, I think he could be the best pass catching running back in this class. And then on top of that, he has the size and the build to be an early down back as well. Now, again, Leonard Fournette's there. That's not happening year 1, maybe not even year 2, because I think Fournette sounded like a 3-year extension, which was basically a 2-year extension, I think. But I loved his profile pre-draft. I didn't hate the landing spot. He was a top 100 draft pick as well, so the draft capital that you like to see is there. So he's a guy that I'm expecting to be a little higher on than most, but I like Rachaad White quite a bit, so I'll gladly grab him here.
All right, and I do like the player. Don't like the team fit or anything like that, but I'm gonna have to go with Dameon Pierce here. I think at this point in the draft, you're willing to take that dart on the talent.
Yeah, he's definitely worth it. Whenever you look at competition, he's fighting against Rex Burkhead and Marlon Mack coming off an Achilles injury. So once you get to he has the day 3. He was a day 3 draft pick, so you don't like that. But he has a nice build. He could be a 3-down back. He didn't at Florida. He wasn't used that way. He's never had anywhere close to 3-down back touches. So we don't know how he would react to that type of workload. But he has the size and the ability to be a 3-down back. To be determined if that happens, but
right, especially he's Houston.
Yeah, but he's the type of the guy where it's like at this point it's more than okay to take that shot. So with you grabbing him, that wraps up my top 5 tiers. Moving down to tier 6, you've already got Alec Pierce. So you know who I'm grabbing here, and that's going to be David Bell. Again, I think he could step in and be a contributor day 1 for Deshaun Watson. We don't know what Deshaun Watson day 1 is going to be, which is the tough part. Who knows when he's going to get on the football field, but with this guy, you're definitely throwing the testing numbers out the window, because if you just go purely off of his athletic testing, you're talking a few rounds later than this. But I liked what I saw him put on the field, and I like the landing spot. So he's a guy that I like to grab around this area.
Yeah, and speaking of a guy of, you like the landing spot, you like, the talent and stuff like that, who's available here. I'm going to go with Jalen Tolbert here of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, no Amari Cooper. Michael Gallup is not going to be ready for week 1, I wouldn't think, right? So Jalen Tolbert could very well be fighting Dalton Schultz as the number 2 option behind CeeDee Lamb for Dak Prescott, and that's not a bad way to start off your career as an NFL receiver. So yeah, and Jalen Tolbert, he looks good too. So no, I like that pick quite a bit. All right, so I'm not gonna, even though I'm not that excited about the guy, he is the next guy off my board. I'm gonna stick to it. I'm gonna grab Kenny Pickett, the quarterback out of Pitt. Coming in pre-draft, the only quarterback for 1 quarterback leagues I was really excited about was Malik Willis, and then he didn't end up getting drafted until the 3rd round. He's going to be sitting behind Ryan Tannehill at a minimum for at least just 1 year, possibly 2. And so, you're really going to let a backup quarterback in a 1 quarterback league sit on your bench for that long. Like, it's just,
especially too, when you look at the history of, the last few years, really the last quite a bit since Russell Wilson, there has not been a successful quarterback drafted in the 3rd round.
Right. Exactly. So it's tough. Like the quarterback situation.
Maybe
is
Jimmy
tough.
G.
like even in one quarterback leagues, I felt like Trey Lance should have been a first round pick last year because of the upside with the rushing ability and things like that. With Kenny Pickett, I don't expect him to last this long in most leagues, even in a one quarterback league.
So,
but I mean, I mean, with Kenny Pickett, you couldn't really have asked for a better situation. You have an extremely stable franchise. You've got freaking Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, George Pickens, Najee Harris. Like he's surrounded by weapons. The offensive line,
damn
obviously,
good defense.
Yeah, he's got a good defense. The offensive line's the only real issue there. So like he's set up to succeed. He just, to me personally, he feels more like a guy that I'm going to be like spot starting because my normal quarterback one has a bad matchup or something like that, and he has a really good one. I don't feel like to me, he doesn't feel like an every week starter in a one quarterback league. So I'm not willing to just, reach and grab him early on whenever there's other guys that I'm a little bit more excited about. But I do think he should go off before the end of the second round. So I'll grab him here before we close out with your last pick.
Yeah. And you already know I'm not leaving this. I'm not leaving this with this dude on the board. I can't do it. I'm taking Jelani Woods.
I was going to say, do I need to scroll down and find Jelani?
So he probably went that far down.
No, he shouldn't have been too far down.
No. Yeah, I'm taking the shot on the athletic freak, and we'll see what happens.
So I feel like the headliners here, like if we went a few more picks deep, I feel like the headliners here is the fact that John Mechie didn't go off the board, despite the fact Houston did use good draft capital on him. He would have been my very next player off the board. He's number 20 overall for me. So he would have been the next guy that I'd grab. I feel like that's the guy that people are gonna be like, whoa, why didn't he go off the board? And I feel like I'm lower on him than most, and it made me feel a little bit better that you didn't grab him either. So I feel like we're not too far off here.
I'm not super high on him myself.
Yeah, I think he'll be a solid receiver, but he's not a guy that I'm super excited about. The other two players in my top 6 tiers, which included 26 players, so only 24 went off here. But Brian Robinson Jr., running back for Washington, I think he's very interesting because Antonio Gibson's there, and I love Antonio Gibson, but they used another top 100 pick on a running back, and they brought back J.D. McKissick, even though he basically already was a Buffalo Bill. Like, I don't know why Washington hates Antonio Gibson, but it's kind of hard to believe they don't hate Antonio Gibson at this point. And so, like, it feels like that Brian Robinson Jr. is just like one fumble away from getting some early down work if Gibson slips up. So I think he's worth a dart throw. And then the other guy is Zamir White, running back out of Georgia that went to the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders did just decline Josh Jacobs' 5th-year option, and Zamir White kind of fits that early down role that Josh Jacobs also plays, to where, maybe after Josh Jacobs plays out this last year of his contract, there's a real chance that Zamir White is the early down banger for this team, and that could all be nullified by them using an early 2nd round pick next year on a running back or something like that. Like you don't know what's going to happen with these guys that get drafted a little bit later, but he was the only other guy outside of tier 6, or he was Brian Robinson, Zamir White, John Mechie III. Those were the 3 guys in my top 26 that didn't go in the top 24. So I wanted to touch on them briefly. But outside of that, this went pretty much how I thought it would, to be honest.
And I like Khalil Shakir here too.
Yeah, Khalil Shakir is very interesting. They did bring in Jamison Crowder, which could hurt Shakir's value year 1, because Jamison Crowder also does a lot of the same things well that Shakir does. But long-term wise, I still like Shakir as well. And then, you mentioned Tyquan Thornton. I like him quite a bit as well. He's another guy that I could see rising for me as we get closer to the year. As much as I love shitting on the Patriots and their wide receiver choices in the NFL draft and things like that, it's a lot of fun. But that's another guy that could end up jumping a tier, I think, as we get closer. But yeah, I mean, overall, this is kind of mostly what I expected. I'm sad I don't have more rookie picks in my real drafts. I literally don't. I'm in 2 dynasty leagues and I don't have a single pick in either league. So I'm going to be working very hard to change that over the next few months.
Well, hey, I mean, if you're ever interested, I've got a few, so you can always hit me up.
Yeah, I'll look your way.
Yeah. So that concludes the episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys so much for the support. We will be doing just random fantasy videos throughout the summer, getting you guys prepared for your draft or just having some fun with it, kind of like how we did with this episode, just going through some stuff that Drew's been working really hard on. And obviously I'll be here to cover any big NFL news. Obviously as we get into training camps, we're hitting rookie mini camps this weekend. A lot of them started today. I'm really excited about. So I'm basically just fiending for anything right now. And then who knows what else happens, maybe some NBA final stuff. Maybe we'll get into that. Maybe we'll get into some more baseball. There's always something to talk about. So once again, thank you guys so much for the support. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification on YouTube, subscribe on anywhere where podcasts are found as well. And we will see you next week with another episode.